Well, hello everyone, and welcome to the August installment of the National Weather Association's webinar series. My name is Becca Mazer, and I'm going to be your host for today's webinar. A few logistics before we get started. Everyone will be kept on mute for the entirety of the talk, but you can ask questions throughout the webinar using the questions GUI or in the chat, and we will answer those questions at the end of the webinar. This month, we are privileged to have Jenny Pittman and Ryan Ellis speak about facilitating a positive office culture, a SOO's perspective. Jenny is the Science and Operations Officer, or SOO, for the National Weather Service in Topeka, Kansas, and Ryan is the SOO at the National Weather Service in Newport, Morehead City. With that, I will let them take the presentation once I make Jenny present her. All right, go ahead whenever you're ready.
Okay, let me get this over in presentation mode. So thanks everyone for having us. It is great to be talking to you today. We are going to talk a little bit about facilitating a positive office culture, and this is stemming from our SOO culture team. Like Becca said, I'm Jenny Pittman. I'm the SOO at NWS Topeka. And I'm going to try not to, we have some acronyms, but I'm going to try not to use a ton of them. Ryan and I are both Science and Operations Officers, and I will let him introduce himself real quick before we jump in.
Yeah, like Becca said, and I'm the Science and Operations Officer here in Morehead City, North Carolina. Been here for about 3 years and been working on positive office culture topics for long before that, probably going back about almost 7 or 8 years now, working with a couple of the National Weather Service headquarters offices on some of the initiatives going on nationally and trying to bring that down to a local level here at the office.
Awesome. So we will go ahead and get started with our presentation. So I'll talk a little bit about the SOO culture team. This is a small team of SOOs. We're also open to DOEs, that is basically the River Forecast Center equivalent of the SOO. We don't have any yet, so we're still looking for some if you are one or know anyone. But what connects us is that we're interested in building an inclusive, diverse workplace that empowers our staff to be at their best. So basically stemmed out of a group actually in a SOO development course that was interested in increasing diversity, increasing inclusion, and recognizing the way that the SOO really influences positive office culture. There are a lot of different ways that the SOO connects the local office to the office's culture, and so we'll explore a lot of those today. Our team is basically working on a couple of different deliverables. We have a SOO culture portal that is available to anyone that's in the National Weather Service. We also are involved in the SOO development course. So this is for relatively new SOOs. It's not every year. So a couple of us were in the course this year that had been SOOs for almost 3 years. But for relatively new SOOs, they go through a couple-week course where we introduce a lot of different topics, and one of those is culture and the influence that the SOO can have on that office culture. We also do presentations like this one, the guest speaker series, which is a Central Region webinar series. We just presented at an annual SOO workshop last week. And this is not just to talk about the team, but also to be able to expose people to some of the material that we've collected with this team. So here are different members. We've got a lot of different people spread across the United States. We're still missing some representation from Southern region, Alaska region, and Pacific region. So again, if you are one of those people or know someone, we're always looking to expand the membership of this team. But we do have a lot of different members that bring their unique perspectives, their unique stories, and all of the information that they have built up over their years of being in the Weather Service and of being a SOO. And I would be remiss to not acknowledge Ariel Cohen. He was the original founding leader of this team and one of the founding members as well, and really set us up for success and where we are today. So how is the SOO a culture influencer? There are a lot of different ways. The first one is probably as the operations leader. So when you get a new tool, when you get some new science coming into the office, the SOO is the one that really kind of sets the tone for how people are going to interpret that. How are they going to treat it? Are they going to be excited about it? Are they not going to be excited? And the SOO really sets the tone for new things coming into operations. SOOs can also be formal mentors, but they really end up being informal mentors, especially for new staff that are coming in. We're setting up their training plans, introducing them to the office. And so even on an informal basis, we really end up in a mentoring relationship with a lot of new staff as well as current staff that's been there for a while. We're obviously trainers. That's one of our biggest duties that we have. And so that involves a lot of one-on-one time. Again, that involves our tone and our attitude about things that are coming down the pike, things that are being released for the office. So really a good chance for us to positively influence that culture. We're also the science infusers. So with new things that are coming in, new research, we're bringing those into the office and encouraging people to be involved with those. One thing that you don't always think about is recruitment. This isn't a formal job duty, but a lot of us are involved with universities, whether that's teaching a class or presenting at AMS or NWA meetings. We're really involved with universities and people before they come into the Weather Service. So another way that we can influence that culture before it even starts is to start influencing students and people that are headed into the Weather Service. We do end up being kind of a liaison between operations and supervisor. As part of the management team, a lot of times forecasters and other ops staff will bring their concerns to us before it makes it all the way to the meteorologist in charge. And so we end up kind of being that conduit between operations and our ultimate supervisor, the MIC. And you'll hear all kinds of stuff. People will bring you stories, people will bring you problems. And so it's a good opportunity to, again, positively influence that culture, support that person in whatever they're going through, and solve it at the lowest possible level. We also work one-on-one with our operations staff during weather event simulations, which are called WEST cases. This is a good opportunity for one-on-one training, not only to kind of see where they're at, see how they're doing, see what their warning performance looks like, but to build that relationship and to help build that culture one-on-one in a little more private environment. But we also conduct after action reviews. And this is kind of tough for culture because you have to look at performance critically, see where you can improve, but also make sure that whoever was involved with that forecast or that warning feels supported throughout the process. So again, kind of a little bit of a line to toe, but it is an important place where you can influence that culture. And then one thing that we don't always think about, but when we have a significant weather event, whether it went well, whether our forecast worked out or it didn't, when there are fatalities, when there are injuries, or just really significant damage, that can really have a big impact on the staff that was working. And people will come to you. It's not just the meteorologist in charge, it's not just the MIC that is supporting people through that event. It is also the SOO and their perspective on how the event went and how they can support that staff. So here are some of the areas that we've collected resources to help other SOOs, to help aspiring SOOs as they move forward with their career and with some of these issues and situations that come up. So one of these is hiring, and I'll talk a little bit more about that here shortly. Psychology, how we build trust with our employees, leading both laterally with our operations staff and up within upper management. Diversity and inclusion, managing conflict, welcoming our new team members, in managing the after effects of weather events. And these are all things, well, a few of these things that we'll detail more in this presentation, but all things that we've built resources for to help other SOOs and aspiring SOOs. So the first one I'll talk about is hiring. And this is a little specific to SOOs, but I really think that this can be applied in other areas as well, even people that are outside the Weather Service or people that don't plan to become part of the management team. I really think these are kind of universal topics. So some of the unique responsibilities that the SOO has during the hiring process, like we talked about with recruitment, reaching out to students, helping them prepare. You want to make sure that when you find those really talented future employees that are within the universities that are about to graduate, that you can help them prepare to be successful. Once you get those employees in the door, then mentoring and training them, supporting them through their early career development. You'll also serve on the hiring committee as a SOO or any other portion of the management team. And then we'll help onboard the new hire as they come into the office and start to adjust. And then one other one is that If it's an on-station promotion, like a lead forecaster or another management position, you'll also be encouraged to provide feedback, provide some coaching to those on-station candidates that weren't selected. And again, if you wanted that person and they weren't selected, this can be a little bit of a difficult line to toe. But it is important to be supportive, provide feedback, and help them be successful for their next position. Once you get the panel, so again, if you're not in the weather service, just kind of the initial list of people before you're planning on conducting interviews, there are a couple different things to look for, and we have all of these resources collected on our portal. But one of the things to look for would be an applicant who values character and integrity. A lot of times the SOO tends to look for those science skills, the science background, but what's really important is that you're hiring a good person, someone that's going to fit into the future culture of your office. Look for difference makers, look for problem solvers, and then if it's an entry-level position, they may not have clear evidence of situational leadership, but that potential is there. That's what you want to look for when you're doing your hiring. And it's tough, but you want to avoid hiring for what we call cultural fit. Instead, you want to hire for either the culture that you envision for your future office. You want to make sure that you're increasing your diversity with the hires that you make. And instead of just picking someone that you click with, someone that feels really natural, you want to kind of push your borders and make sure that it's someone that's going to continue to build your culture in a positive direction. And some of the resources that we've collected on the portal but are also widely available includes a Pioneer Migrator Settler map, which is just kind of an XY graph that tells you where a future employee may influence the growth of your office. You may just want to make a simple yes, no, maybe ranking prior to interviews, and I know a lot of us do that. And then there are a couple of resume scoring examples that we have on the portal as well. But just having some of these resources before you move into the interview is important. And then once you get to the interview, be ready with interview questions that are people and culture oriented. Be ready to talk about the culture of your office. Honestly, but obviously without throwing anyone under the bus, but be ready to answer those questions because the people that you're hiring will be interested as well. Check your references. I know some workplaces don't encourage you to reach out to those that are not listed, but within the weather service, you know, we have a really tight network. So reach out to people that aren't listed, use your network, make sure that you're finding out everything that you can about this future employee. And there are some resources out there, especially within the weather service. The organizational field guide for managers is available. We also have some sample interview questions and some sample questions to ask your references on our portal. And that's not always something that we think about as being prepared to talk to those references. Sometimes we'll just walk into it expecting it to be open-ended, but it's good to be prepared with a couple of questions and make sure we're really getting the right information from those references. So we mentioned that effective hiring really increases the diversity of our office. And diversity is really important, not just to reflect the diverse world that we live in, but also because diverse teams actually outperform those that lag behind in diversity. There's a great study from McKinsey and Company that breaks down some of the stats on this, but diverse teams are more successful than those that lag behind. Diversity looks like some of the things that we've heard before: race, sex, color, religion, genetic information, national origin, sexual orientation, and disability. All of these different groups are bringing different information, different backgrounds, different perspectives to our workforce. In addition to that, diversity also looks like differences in personality, different strengths, our different learning styles, what motivates us, what are our interests, our backgrounds, and our experience. All of these are varied as well. So even if you don't feel like you see a diverse team, you do still have diversity in some of these areas. So how can the SOO help promote diversity? One of the ways is through hiring, but if you're not hiring anyone new, there are some other ways to do that. And if you're someone that's involved in a workforce that would not be involved in hiring, some of these other ways are ways that you can promote diversity as well. And so that's through things like team and work group composition. You may always have the same people joining your science team, but it's important to increase the diversity of that team, bring some new ideas, bring some new faces. bring a different gender in. Initially, my entire science team was male, and I've been recruiting some of our females as well, just trying to increase the diversity of that team. And also how you delegate work. You might want to go to the same person all the time because they work very well for you, but it's important to really involve everyone and increase the diversity of the people that are completing that work for you. And then it's just really important to walk the talk and be inclusive as a SOO and as a member of an office. So talking about inclusion, there are kind of three facets of inclusion. Equity and equality are used interchangeably here. We've all seen that graphic where you have equality as everyone on kind of the same height box, but there's one person that's shorter and can't reach whatever it is. So I use equity here just because I feel like equity is a little more representative of what we're going for here, reaching people where they are. Openness, and then also belonging. So these are the three facets of how people see inclusion in an office. And inclusion has to be really deliberate. You have to kind of step out of your comfort zone in order to really be inclusive in your workplace. Again, like we talked about in the last slide, don't keep including the same people. Make sure that you're reaching out to others and expanding your comfort zone as well. And it's important to recognize your own biases. Everyone has them. It's not a bad thing, but recognize where you might be biased and where you might not be, including everyone, and try to tackle those. Be transparent. That really helps with that openness, and also employees' perception of equity or fairness in the workplace. And then as far as microaggressions go, obviously have zero tolerance for bullying and harassment. But also work to tackle these microaggressions, work to identify them and figure out a way to nip them in the bud before they negatively impact your office culture. And all of these areas that I've talked about are ways we're trying to influence the office culture positively. These are also ways that if you're not thinking about these things, you can negatively impact the office culture. So it's important to be very deliberate here and make sure that you are influencing the culture in the way that you want to. So now we're going to move over to Ryan, and he's going to discuss a couple more topics.
All right, thanks, Jenny. And you know, what Jenny's talked about to this point is a lot of the things that you're trying to control before somebody even steps into your office. But there comes a time when you actually have to work with the people that are there. And so we really need to get down to the details of how to work with people and how to build that trust and develop those relationships. And so what I want to talk about here is a little bit more digging into the details about how to do that. And you know, right off the start, you have to realize the SOO is coming from a position now where it's not just about the individual anymore. And you can argue the same for lead forecasters or anybody else that's in any type of position of leadership. We spend a lot of time on the individual trying to get to the place in our career where we want to be. So we fill our resumes with individual accomplishments. We have, you know, we're trying to highlight what we have done so that we stand out in this incredibly competitive atmosphere that we're in. But at some point, you have to realize that the value of leadership is bringing everybody around you up. And so it's not just about you anymore. It's how can you develop the person next to you? How can you get in and make sure that you know, you're bringing people to the next level with you? Because if you can do that, now you're showing not only value in yourself, but the value of bringing everybody else with you. And with that comes a great increase in productivity and innovation and all of the diversity and inclusion thought that Jenny was just talking about. So why it matters so much is because it leads to the things that we want, which is great innovation in science. So we got to work on those relationships, but all the time, you know, we have to make sure that we're doing it internally and externally. So the Weather Service, as most of you know, has a focus on building external relationships with partners, but we've really got to focus on those internal relationships in the office that we have as well. And also between offices or office to national center, there's a lot of different bridges that have to be built. And the SOO is in a unique position to kind of do just that. So, you know, but everybody's different. You have to tailor your communication style to who you're talking to. Not everybody's going to react the same to what you do. And so when I say this, a lot of times I hear things like, well, I shouldn't have to change my identity in order to do something. So as far as talking to somebody else, I shouldn't have to change who I am because somebody else doesn't communicate in that way. But you're really not. Think of the chameleon here in the picture. The chameleon is a chameleon no matter what. His identity is the same, but constantly changing the face based on the environment that they're in. And that's really what we need to do. Based on the environment you're in and the audience that you're talking to, you need to change your communication style to fit that if you want to be heard and have the thing that you want to get done actually get done. So by connecting with people on that level, you're starting to lay that foundation of trust because you really got to meet them where they are. So start small, start really small. A lot of times when you talk about culture, a lot of people talk about, more barbecues and going out to sporting events and this and that and just making sure everybody's happy. That's not quite it, but it does play a role. I once had somebody who told me, you can tell us, to go to a baseball game, but just because I go to a baseball game with you doesn't mean I'm going to trust you. No, that's true. But without that foundation, you might be laying the groundwork for bigger trust later. So maybe at that baseball game, you sit next to somebody that you don't usually talk to much at the office, and you find out something that they may be going through that you're going through as well. Well, that's going to open up a little bit of trust and conversation so that maybe the next time you're in the office on a midnight shift together, maybe you expand on that a little bit, and that trust builds a little bit more and a little bit more so that when you're in that severe weather event and that person is sitting next to you, now you've built this foundation of trust going forward. So, you can't get to the top of the mountain in one step. You've got to build very small. But if you take some of these things, people just want to be heard. They just want to feel safe. So if you can set that environment where that's happening, people are going to respond better. Don't try to fix everything. Sometimes it's just the venting that works. And then you want to model the behavior that you want to see. So anytime something goes wrong, you have to take ownership in it, right? If you're throwing somebody else under the bus for something that happened, then somebody else in the office is going to see that, and then they're going to throw somebody under the bus. But if you model the behavior that you want, then that's over time, that's what you're going to get. So that allows us to kind of move the ball forward, but it really starts with that environment that you're in. Next slide. So we start right at the beginning here. Here's an example that a lot of our team members here at Morehead City have worked on recently. One of the initiatives from headquarters was to start a local mentoring team, and they released a website that had a lot of resources on it, including templates for welcome packets. And this is an example of one of those for our office. And so before an employee even steps in the door, we're trying to set that environment immediately. So this is a chance to reach out to this person. They might be coming to a new city, a new office. They're going to have some things that they're uncomfortable about naturally. Maybe this is the first time they've moved away from home, or whatever it is. So you're trying to set that before you get into the office. But at the same time, it allows you an opportunity. And as a SOO, this is an opportunity where not only can you hear those concerns of the person coming in, but you can kind of showcase the culture you have, but also the expectations you have for the new employee. So somebody may come in and you say, look, this is not how we do things here. So if you ever hear somebody making you uncomfortable for this or that, come to us. We want to hear about it. That helps make the new employee feel safe, but also in a positive manner, it's telling them the expectations that we expect of them as well. So it's easier to set those expectations when the conversation is positive, as opposed to waiting till something negative happens and then trying to set the expectations. So doing it up front is better. Next slide. So leading up is something that is very hard to do sometimes, especially if you're a new employee, if you are an early career professional. And so what happens is there can be a lot of reasons why somebody with a great idea doesn't speak up. It could be because of the personal dynamics involved, whatever it is. But sometimes the best ideas are left on the table because that environment hasn't been set to allow them to happen. And so we want to make sure that we're providing a safe space for that. And a lot of times where I see this right now, and it doesn't matter if you're in the weather service or not, but a lot of places are dealing with this generational gap where we've got people that have been in the field for a long time with a lot of experience. And we've got people coming out of college with brand new ideas that are doing things that didn't exist when the more experienced folks were in college themselves. And so we have to kind of marry those two things together. As a SOO, we have a chance to build that bridge where we're recognizing and valuing the experience of those that have been here a while and making sure that they're heard. And then also at the same time, giving us a chance to maybe step out of our comfort zone into something new by bringing the new idea in. So you really got to bring everybody to the table. And then that's where that diversity of thought comes in. And when you've got all of those working together, now you can start to innovate. Next slide. So this process is not easy. We've tried to kind of qualify it a little bit here with, just starting with the self-introspection. If I want to be a great SOO, I've got to start with me. I've got to start with looking inside and, like Jenny said before, finding those biases that I might have, looking at things and making sure I'm really taking all of that into account. And then once you have that basic building block of, looking inside, now you can start to look externally and you start looking at your one-on-one relationships with people. How does this person react versus this person? What can this person over here bring to the table? But then you're going to keep building that into working with a group or a team, and then maybe leading that team as opposed to just being a part of it. And then eventually you're going to have employees that they're going to want to keep going on with their careers, obviously, and advance. And so now it's, okay, they've done everything they can at the local level. How do we get them into a regional level or national level where their ideas are influencing some agency policy or regional policy at one thing or another? So all these blocks kind of build up on top of each other to build the success that we want. So we do have a little bit of a curriculum, and this is on the SOO resources that we've kind of put together. But if you're interested in this, this really can work for anybody. So you can reach out to me after this or whatever. But this is using that stair-step approach, kind of an introduction to culture that then kind of goes through that, looking internally and then working with others and then working as part of a team, and then getting your ideas to a higher level. And so we've just gone and kind of collated all this stuff together from various resources around the web, things that have worked for us in our careers, and kind of put this together for you to follow as kind of a leadership and culture development curriculum, if you will. So the Chameleon comes back for a reprise here, and that's because I wanted to talk a little bit about adaptability. A lot of times change is the thing that is holding us back. We're afraid of change, or we're uncertain about what that change could bring. We don't want things to get worse than they are now. And so it keeps us from moving forward. So a little advice here, the most successful hitters in baseball learn to hit the curveball. Whatever that change is, nothing in the world remains the same. So the more you can get ahead of that change and help influence that change, the better off you're going to be. So, you really want to step out of your comfort zone, push your boundaries a little bit. But as a leader of change, if you're in that position, creating those safe zones in that environment to help those around you adapt to those new situations is really key as well. So tech innovation, something new comes down the pipe and we know that it's coming no matter what. We can fight it all we want, or we can actually engage in the process and learn how to figure out a constructive way to give feedback on the process so that we start to be owners of the process as well. And that comes around and helps us in some of our bigger innovations that take a lot more than one person to move the needle. So this has kind of been around the business world forever, but the law of diffusion of innovation is a great way to kind of look at things to get ideas to the next level. A lot of times we feel like our idea isn't good enough if everybody isn't on board with it. That's just never going to be the case. If you look at something like some of the best products out there in the business world, this is how they go about trying to sell them. Basically the law states that if you can get to about 20% or so of early adopters, you're going to have enough momentum to get you back up over this hill and onto the other side. So you've got to find those people in the office that want the same change that you want and move it forward together. And the more people that jump on board, you start to get people that say, okay, maybe I'm not one of the early adopters, but I wouldn't mind trying out whatever this is. And then eventually you'll get to a point where enough people in the office are doing whatever the change is, so that others will say, well, I can see this train's leaving the station and I want to be on it, so I'm going to jump on now. And then you're always going to have a percentage of people that no matter what you do, you're not going to bring them along with you. So it's important to remember that. And it doesn't make your idea unworthy. You just have to kind of move forward with it and just know that you're not going to get everybody. Next slide. So putting it all together, like Jenny and I said in this talk so far, SOOs can influence culture on so many levels, but so can everybody else. I mean, everybody in the office has this responsibility, from the person just coming in to the person in charge. No matter where you are on the career ladder, this is so important, because a lot of people feel like, this is something nice to do if you've got the time to do it, but we've got all this other stuff going on. Let's do that first, and we'll put this over here on the back burner. Really, it should be the opposite, because if you can get the culture right up front, all that other stuff you have to do gets easier, because more people want to help out, more people want to pitch in. The ability to produce is multiplied. So you really should put that up front, and then everything else gets easier. The hiring, I really think that's a huge part of it, especially in this realm that we're in right now, where there's so much turnover. If you can get the hiring right, it makes it very easy. So if you're in a position to hire, make sure you're spending the proper amount of time doing that. So, building trust at the most basic level, we talked about that, setting the environment that you want to have for those in your office, and then helping people through that process of leading up, listening to all the ideas that are out there, and giving people the confidence and the empowerment to be able to do that. That's really going to help the office in the long run. Just a rundown of current and future work going on. In the weather service itself, we have the organizational health action plan at the headquarters level that's currently being worked on right now. We've recently got a new director, and one of his 3 main priorities is people. So we're going to be spending a lot of time on this. Jenny and I have helped to work to put together with a lot of our other SOO counterparts the culture portal that's internal to the weather service for the SOOs themselves to help facilitate better local office culture. We're participating in training that the SOOs go through. We're helping those. Jenny showed the map earlier of all the people around the country that have been involved in this type of work, and each one of them has specialization to helping set up a local office culture team or a mentoring team. So if you're thinking about doing it yourself and you haven't yet and you're looking for a little help, maybe reach out to somebody on that map that's nearby that might be able to help you out. On the regional level, they're standing up culture teams and focal points at each weather service region. This is something that hasn't been done before, and so this is definitely a sign that at all levels of the organization, this is being taken seriously, because the successes have been shown that the better the office culture you have, the better performing office that you're going to have. And I think that that's the success that all of us want. So, and then if you're interested, reach out to one of us, because we want to continue to strengthen that network of culture ambassadors in the Weather Service, so that, just like that diffusion of innovation graph shows, the more people you can get on board, the more you can magnify that message and get us to the point where the entire agency is moving forward in a positive way culturally. This is the key points slide. I'm just going to leave this up here. And I know we got kind of a small group here today, but that's a great opportunity to discuss and ask questions. So I'm going to kind of turn it back over to Becca at this point.
Thanks, Ryan and Jenny. That was an amazing overview of the work you both and all the SOOs across the National Weather Service are doing to really focus on that culture of the office and just make it better, so that like you said, performance will just skyrocket, and in whatever that performance metric is that you're looking at, it's just going to make the office much better. So thank you for your work, and thank you for providing your insights here to our group. We have a first question here will be, could you share some examples for how operational staff provided feedback to you that led to positive changes within your program areas?
Do you want to go, Jenny, or do you want me to take this one?
You can start, Ryan.
Okay. So, one thing we did here in Morehead City last year, we started doing what we're calling a leadership summit, which basically each year is a nice all-around look at the office, kind of on a big picture vision type of standpoint. And one of the things we did was we did anonymous Google Forms for the staff, and in that we asked questions such as, what do you feel contributed to the positive culture in the office? If our culture decided to start going negative, and we saw this over the next couple of years, what do you think would be the biggest contributor to that negative culture? And that way people were able to be honest, provide feedback. We also did office goals in that manner. A goal, like if you were in charge of office goals, what would you want to do? What are the top 3 things that you would want to do? And then what I did was I put them all together on a Google Jamboard, and then we kind of separated those into the things that became priorities. Either more people said the same thing and that became a priority, or it was a focus area that we really cared about and wanted to move forward with. And so those are ways that we could do it, on a larger scale. But then in general, I think just continually every day working on that environment so that the staff knows that they're in a safe place to share has allowed, the conversations just one-on-one have been incredible. And so once you really set that environment, that just allows for that to happen. And so that's one of the things you can work on if you are in a position to do so.
And I think we've done a couple of things, especially recently. We've had some people come into our office with some pretty good education backgrounds, and they've taken a pretty hard look at how we've done some of our training twice a year. Everybody has the seasonal symposium. That's a full day, and it's overwhelming, and you get lunch and then you forget half of the things that happened. And so we've had a couple people provide feedback on that and how we could improve it, and we've really changed the format, made it more exercise based, and that's all feedback from the staff that's helped develop more effective training. We've also had our culture team do these cool little information about me, and we spotlight 2 employees every month, and you think no one's reading it until someone comes up to you and asks you about it. And I think it's really been a conversation starter, and something that was very ground up that has helped the office get to know each other better. So there's a lot of feedback coming through, and I think the more honest we can be with each other and the more we can get to know each other, the more it really improves the office.
I have sort of a quasi tough question, maybe. I mean, we're all scientists, and one thing that I know I've been very interested is the science of the psychology behind changing or change and culture change and just people in general, how they think and how they react and all that sort of good stuff. I'm curious if you've done, and maybe you've already talked a little bit about this, but have you done anything specifically more about the psychology of humans, with your in your office, potentially training on how to work better in a group or managing personalities? Have you done anything more really focused on that psychology aspect in your offices?
Yeah, for me, we actually work this into the Hollings student programs that we host every summer quite a bit. And what's nice about that is everybody gets involved. Yes, it's a Hollings program and it's meant for students, but we've got staff members that are mentoring those students. We've got staff members that are helping on the research projects that they're doing and whatnot. And so one of the things we do that we work into that program that we make sure is there is we've got a research component. That's what they're there for. We've got a learn operations component. Again, they're probably looking towards the weather service at some point and they want to learn that. But the third thing that we include is a leadership component. And a lot of the stuff that you just talked about, Becca, is in that. And some of it is in the leadership curriculum there that we brought in, but every week we set aside time where we have a discussion on one of these leadership topics, whether it's personality type training or anything like that. And at the same time, I may ask a member of the staff to actually lead that discussion. So now they get a chance to do some mentoring on their own, but they're also participating in that discussion. And I might bring in newer employees that might want to participate, or anybody that wants to participate. And so we have nice roundtable discussions, and it's just setting aside that time. That's all that's for. It's not for anything else that's going on. It's for that. But then what I try to do is for each of those topics, tie in where I've either seen it successful in the weather service or how it helps us directly. And so you get the why behind why you want to do this stuff and why it's so important.
And it's been a few years we've done Myers-Briggs for everyone in the office. And I only know for Central Region, but we have Scott Tessmer, who's a Myers-Briggs facilitator and can come to the office and do that for you. And that's always really interesting for everyone to be able to kind of identify with themselves, but also with each other. And then our local culture team tries to tackle a different issue about every month. It's more like posting things for people's availability so that, if they have time, they can read these articles, they can look on the bulletin board that we have. This month, we're talking about grit and resilience, but we do try to get into some of those more psychological topics. I'm definitely not a psychology expert, but we do have some psychology references within the portal as well. And a lot of that is TED Talks, because it helps to be able to listen to an expert in that field and really be able to identify for yourself what things you might be doing correctly as far as group work or how you're interacting with others. And so those resources are available. And I feel like we could do more within my own office too, of spreading those resources around.
I'll just say too, to add on to that, like as we've expanded more into the social sciences, you see more and more of that every single day with how we interact with the people that we're trying to warn and influence and out in the community. And so a lot of those topics that apply within the office, of course, apply outside the office as well. And so you get a little more depth of understanding when you go to a vulnerable community and you start to converse with them about why maybe they took the action that they did. You start thinking about their point of view, their frame of reference, and where they are, whether it's socioeconomically or whatever that may be. And you start to understand better why they took the action they did, which then in turn allows you to bring that back to the office and try to build that into the future products.
Yeah, all great examples. And up here in Alaska region, we just had a presentation on co-production, which is a term that I've never really heard before. And it's not really about the collaboration on working together and something. It's really about actually producing something together as a team, outside of the Weather Service, bringing the Weather Service in, but with our partners, we're working together to produce a better product for our customers. And I thought that was a very interesting comparison to collaboration, and that they're very, very distinct and separate, and very much a part of the sociology aspect of social science aspect of our job. And I thought it was just fascinating. So there's a lot of that we as meteorologists can still learn and apply to everyday life, even not just the work environment. So I don't see any more questions, and I'll let the audience, if you have any last minute thoughts that you would like to ask or comment to Jenny and Ryan. Otherwise, Jenny and Ryan, if you have any final thoughts, go for it for a minute or two while we see if we have any more questions come in.
I don't have a whole lot to wrap up, just if you're interested in any of these resources and maybe you're outside the Weather Service or don't have access to the portal, just feel free to reach out to either Ryan or myself, and we can connect you with those resources.
Yeah, and I'll just say that, culture is one of the hardest things, I think, especially for us as scientists to grasp, because we're always looking for that data, looking to that data and sometimes you just can't measure it, but you can feel it, you can see it, and so it is important, and if you're in a position in your office where maybe you're in the minority that thinks it's important right now, my advice is just keep going. Just keep going. Don't give up on it, because it's worth it in the end.
Will either of you be at the annual meeting the end of this month? Or,
Yes, I will.
Sweet.
I will be there virtually and in spirit and available to be reached out to all week long.
Perfect. Yeah, that was what I was getting to. Anybody out there who wants to chat in person or virtually, you can reach out to both Jenny and Ryan then during our annual meeting, which is coming up super soon. So excited. It'll be my first time in Pittsburgh, let alone Pennsylvania, and it's always such a wonderful time to get together with everybody and catch up on life, and then catch up on the science of weather and operational weather. So I think with that, we'll end. Looking forward to seeing everybody at the annual meeting coming up here in Pittsburgh, and take care. Thanks for joining us.